middle of my very long drive today, but it's all good. Gonna make some overtime and make some motherfucking money. Anyway, what I am gonna I would say write down, but word down, speak down today in my YouTube journal is, okay, so I've said before that step one to self-improvement is self-knowledge. In fact, step one to a lot of things is self-knowledge. Know thyself, all that good stuff. And so it's led to a lot of reflection, introspection, kind of self-observation and all that good stuff. And something I found out, maybe not super recently, but fairly recently, is that, there we go, is that I'm weird. Like, I'm a weirdo. And my friends are probably like, duh, we know. But when you are, it's hard to view yourself from the outside, if that makes sense. Like, to someone who is weird, to themselves, they will seem normal because they've lived with themselves their entire life and don't know any different, you know? Like me. I've always known that I was different because, especially in social settings or just out in the world, I will notice myself doing things differently, saying things differently than most other people. And well, I could be very generous to myself and ascribe this to simply individuality and, you know, being different and being edgy. That is not the case. Straight up, I'm a weirdo. Now, not being able to see myself from the outside in, not sure to what level I am a weirdo. I will probably have to ask my friends. But yeah, that's my rather recent revelation, is that I'm extremely weird. Now, like I've said, I'm not sure if this is a autistic level weird or if this is a socially awkward level of weird, or if this is a march to the beat of my own drum level of weird. I think it's somewhere in between being very much an individual and being, you know, autistic level of weird. But I know that I can function in society and do pretty well for myself. Pretty well. But I know that I can make friends, I can work, I can hold jobs, I can run for public office, though that's not saying much. You know, all that good stuff. I can be a productive member of society for sure. Very productive. I think it's mostly socially that I'm weird. But it is what it is. This is something I am coming to grips with. It's something that I'm realizing, and it's something that I am going to have to continue to face head on, because although part of me wishes that I never came to this realization, part of me is also really glad that I did, because it makes a lot of things make sense, as the truth often does. When you discover the truth, suddenly things start to make a lot more sense, and puzzle pieces start to fall into place in my mind that were kind of scattered and confused before. For example, harken back to the days of your childhood, and there are always, in those weird kids that kind of hang out together just because, and I've always been in that group. Should have been a big fucking clue right there. However, it never was. I was always like, oh, I don't know, like, that never clued me in that I was actually one of those weird kids. Because, like I said, it's hard to see yourself from the outside. But, yeah, that was always me. Still is, to be honest. And, yeah, like, that should have been my big clue number one. That I was one of the weird kids, is that I always hung out with the weird kids, and the weird kids were my friends. Shout out to all the weird kids. And, it's cool. I like my friends, and it is what it is. The other thing that I alluded to earlier is should have been another big clue for me, and that's that I often find myself doing things alone, but I don't know, just where I stop and eat lunch, I'm the only one eating lunch there. Where I go and what I'm doing, I very often find that I am the only one there, and I'm the only one doing that there, if that makes sense. I guess that makes sense. And yeah, just a lot of the time when I'm doing things that I want to do, being places that I want to be, I am the only one doing that thing and being in that place. So that should have also told me that, well, it did tell me that I wasn't fitting in, but I, of course, ascribed that to the cool kind of not fitting in. The being an individual type of not fitting in. However, looking back and upon a little bit more reflection, it was weird that I was doing those things, and it was weird that I was in those places. And fuck it, I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna keep doing that stuff. But I have to face facts that I enjoy doing these things and being in these places because I'm weird. I could, probably will in the future, dedicate a whole YouTube channel to all the weird shit that I have done and do on a daily basis. Just because there's a lot of it. Another thing that should have really clued me in is that there is definitely a genetic component to this, because when I am out in public with my family, which I'm really not anymore, but back in the day, you know, as a kid, as a teenager, I remember my family and I being very strange, acting strangely, dressing strangely, doing strange things, just really being out of place when we were out and about in the world. And part of this is that we were basically our own little religious cult, which, you know, take it for what it's worth. And part of that, I think, is a genetic component, because I've met my family and we're all a little off, just saying. I love my family, and I'm very proud of my family, and a lot of them have gone on to do some pretty cool shit, and a lot of them are extremely talented. Oh, that autistic thing comes to mind again. But when we are out and about in society, we do not fit in. And hey, that can be a good thing, but it kind of, it should have been another clue that I am a weirdo. Should have been. So, yeah, definitely a genetic component to my weirdness. But there's definitely also a social component, because, like I said, I kind of grew up in a religious, I don't know. I hate calling it a cult, because you can call anything a cult, but very weird religious background, very weird social background. Like, I was homeschooled, as are a lot of weirdly religious people. Homeschooled, had a lot of weird rules and, well, what seemed normal rules as a kid, but looking back, it's kind of like, wow, like some really weird stuff going on there. So, you know, some genetics, some social, and, you know, throughout my life, I've always had weird friends and done weird things, and therefore, you know, it just kind of snowballed from there. And what to do with this newfound knowledge? Not sure, but it's good knowledge. I think this new self-knowledge, it's gonna be very useful going forward, and it explains a lot of past events. And yeah, I'm not exactly sure what to do with this knowledge going forward, but it's just something I'll have to keep in mind, that, you know, when I'm starting businesses or trying to make political moves or deciding what direction to take my life, something that I'm going to have to keep in mind is that other people, especially people who don't know me, and, well, maybe especially people who do know me, that I'm not normal. I'm weird. I'm off. And definitely not going to stop my self-improvement journey at all. If anything, I know that, as I always have in the past, I'm going to have to work really, really, really hard get what I want out of life and out of this world. I know that being weird and awkward kind of, it's not an advantage, let's just say. And if I want to get ahead, if I want to win, I'm going to have to really put in that blood, sweat, and tears. And I always have done that, so nothing new there. But yeah, I think going forward, I am going to talk to people about this, maybe my men's support group, maybe my friends, and outside advice is definitely going to be needed in figuring out where to go from here. But yeah, just a really big realization that I've been having, and wanted to get it down on quote unquote paper. So yeah, it is what it is.